Welcome to Grade 9 English Short Story Analysis. The Rocking Horse Winner by D. H. Lawrence, prepared and presented by Ronnie. Okay, so before we begin, let's look at the author's background and a brief biography of D. H. Lawrence. Lawrence was born in a poor family in Nottinghamshire, England, in 1885. When he was in university, he began to publish poems and worked as a teacher. Then he wrote poems, plays, travel books, novels, and even essays. He also painted. His work normally included themes of freedom, redemption, and tormented family relationships. He was a very controversial writer as several of his books were banned. He died in France in 1930, 4 years after publishing The Rocking Horse Winner. Great. Now that we've seen a little bit about the author's background, let's look at the historical context of The Rocking Horse Winner. The text of The Rocking Horse Winner does not directly relate to many historical events, except for its general setting of the middle and upper class England, and what Lawrence considered to be the dehumanizing effect of greed in the modern society. Lawrence's body of work, however, was in itself important for establishing a free press in the United Kingdom. Okay, guys, now here we can look at the character's description. Here we got Paul. Paul is the protagonist of the story. He has emotional feelings that he cannot control himself. He gets obsessed with luck, particularly luck that leads to financial gain. Paul becomes increasingly obsessive over the course of the story, and even transitions into an almost superstantial or inhumane figure. In the end, he rides his rocking horse with such intensity that he collapses and dies. And here we go, Oscar. Oscar is Paul's wealthy, greedy uncle. He likes horses, races, and uses Paul's tips to make bets himself. He also encourages Paul to give Hester some of his winnings. When Paul dies, Oscar suggests that Hester is of the money more than Paul made instead of having a strange son, or at least that Paul better off dead than living in such a state. Ultimately, it's implied that Oscar values wealth above everything else, and was only using his nephew's strange ability for his own benefit. Hester. Hester is Paul's mom, a middle-class woman with 2 other children as well. She is obsessed with appearances and particularly with keeping up in the same appearance of being wealthier than she actually is. Hester believes strongly in luck and thinks that she is unlucky because she is married to a man who is Paul's father who does not make a lot of money. At the beginning of the story, Hester feels cold toward her children and cannot even make herself love them. By the end of the story, however, she is overwhelmed with concern for Paul's well-being, although Lawrence does not show her reaction to Paul's death. Bassett. Bassett is the gardener at Paul's house, a young man whose foot was wounded in World War I. He is also friends with Oscar Cresswell. Bassett talks with Paul about horse racing and his partner in his intentionally betting before Oscar finds out about it. Bassett is serious, but a simple man who seems to value Paul greatly, even thinking that Paul has miraculous powers and he is keeping the money Paul wins and safe place. So now we are at the minor characters. The nurse. The nurse tends to Paul and his 2 sisters. She answers Hester's phone call when Hester is worried about Paul. Paul's father. Hester says that Paul's father is unlucky because his business ideas never yield any money. John. John is one of Paul's two sisters. She is frightened by how furiously he rides his rocking horse. Now let's look at the setting of the story. The story takes place in their home in England, most likely in London because the horse race mentioned all took place just after the First World War in the late 1910s or the early 1920s. This is known because the race involved a popular, well-known race when the book was published in 1926. And because the children in the story had the governess and the family had servants, which were normal in this period of time. So now we are looking at imagery and symbolism. There must be more money is a phrase that is repeated throughout the story. Hester craves money. She needed to continue her current lifestyle, although there isn't enough money. Throughout the story, money destroys love and distances people from their relationships. Luck is another symbol used in the story. If you are lucky, you have money. That's why it's better to be born lucky than rich. If you are rich, you might lose your money. When Paul is told this, he begs to ride his rocking horse to find luck so he can make money for his mother. He believes if she is lucky, he will be given his mother's love and attention. The eyes of Paul are described very often in the story. Eyes are used to show the transition of innocence to madness throughout the story. The author uses adjectives such as unsure or innocent early in the story, and glaring, flurry, and wild-eyed later in the story, and ending with the blue stones when he is ill. Narrative, voice, point of view, third person. So let's look at the plot. The Rocking Horse winner has an omniscient narrator. The narrator sees all, knows all, and is not a character in the story. The narrator's style allows for less bias than the first-person narrative, which allows the author to emphasize different characters' angles and others. Readers see the views of both the mother and Paul. Paul is innocent and alone. He is afraid and constantly haunted by the whispering. The mother is unhappy, cold-hearted, and unfeeling. The characters and settings are an appropriate fit for the time period. Okay, so let's look at the mood in the story. The mood of the story is abundant. The children never grew up with a mother's love. Paul tries his best to find luck to make his mother proud of him, but she only wants more. Hester's abandonment caused her son to search until he fell ill and died. The tone. The tone of the story changes depending on the character and that is being looked at. Overall, the theme is haunted. The haunted tone gives a story a bizarre structure that bears the coincidence of greed, restless, dishonest, and loneliness, and subplots in the story that are portrayed by the whispering. There must be more money. And the lunacy of Paul while he rides his rocking horse. The loneliness is seen due to the lack of love between the mother and the children. Nevertheless, when her children were present, she always felt a center of her heart go hard. She was unable to feel any love toward her children at all. Okay, so now it comes down to themes. Greed and materialism, luck and hard work, anxiety, and family and intimacy.